I met Samantha at a wedding in the summer of 2009. It was one of those perfect June days, not too hot, not too formal, with an open bar and a crowd of people just relaxed enough to enjoy themselves. I hadn't planned to talk to anyone, really. I was there for the groom, a buddy from college, and had mentally prepped for an evening of polite conversation and early exits. Then I got seated at a table near the dance floor, and there she was, in a burgundy bridesmaid dress, laughing at a joke someone told before I'd even introduced myself. We clicked instantly. It wasn't some dramatic, movie-style lightning bolt. It was just easy. She had this calm confidence, the kind that makes you feel grounded just sitting next to her. We spent most of dinner talking about travel, our favorite bad movies, the music we grew up with. After the first slow dance, she asked if I wanted to grab a drink, and we ended up staying at the bar long after most of the guests had gone home. I walked her to her hotel room that night, and she kissed me on the cheek before going inside. I remember driving home thinking, that felt different. We started dating a week later. By 6 months in, we were basically living at each other's apartments, and after a year, we signed our first lease together. It was a tiny place near the edge of the city, 1 bedroom, creaky floors, and a fridge that made noises in the middle of the night. But we made it ours. Cooked dinners together, adopted a lazy old cat from a shelter, filled the walls with art prints and photographs from our weekend road trips. We got married 2 years after moving in, a backyard ceremony at her parents' place, with string lights and a taco truck, just close friends and family. It was simple, but it was everything we wanted. That night we danced barefoot in the grass and talked about how lucky we felt to have found each other at just the right time in our lives. Now, 12 years later, our life looks different, but it's still ours. We live in a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland. I work in IT for a finance company. Remote most days, structured hours, not glamorous, but it keeps the lights on. Samantha works in marketing at a creative agency downtown. She's incredibly sharp, the kind of person who can lead a meeting, write a pitch, and charm a room all in one afternoon. I've always admired that about her. We don't have kids. It's not something we ruled out completely, but we settled into our rhythm without them. Our days are full in other ways. We cook together most nights. We've got a standing Saturday morning routine: farmer's market, local coffee shop, long walk around the park. On Sundays, we sleep in too late and end up eating brunch at 2 p.m. We've filled the house with things that make us happy: books, music, plants, cozy furniture. It's not flashy, but it feels lived in, and it feels like us. If someone had asked me to define our marriage in one word, I'd probably say familiar. Not in a boring way, in a way that feels earned. We've built something real, steady, and shared. Something that, for over a decade, has felt like home. One of the things I appreciate most about our life is the quiet rhythm we've found. It didn't happen overnight. It came from years of figuring out who does what, how we fight, how we make up, how to exist in each other's space without stepping on toes. Some couples thrive on spontaneity. Samantha and I have always found our strength in the routine. Our days usually start the same way. I'm the early riser. I like to make coffee before the sun's up, sit by the window in the kitchen while it's still quiet, and just exist for a bit. It's my reset. Sam rolls out of bed about an hour later, always wrapped in a blanket like a human burrito, hair a mess, eyes barely open. She heads straight for her mug, black coffee, splash of oat milk, no sugar. I leave it on the counter for her every morning without fail. She never asks. I just do it. Little things like that, they build up over time. Not grand gestures, just quiet consistency. She works in the office most weekdays, but Fridays she's home. I usually set up in the guest room, my unofficial office, and she takes the dining table. She lights a candle, plays lo-fi music, and somehow manages to make a spreadsheet feel like part of a magazine shoot. I'll peek out sometimes and catch her typing, brow furrowed, completely in her zone. There's something deeply comforting about seeing someone so in their element. Evenings are for winding down. I handle dinner most nights. I like to cook, and she likes when I cook, so it works out. She's the one who keeps the fridge organized, though. There's a system, apparently, and I've given up trying to understand it. We eat around 7, usually in the dining room, sometimes on the couch if we're in a lazy mood. We've been working our way through old movies lately, her pick one night, mine the next. I've sat through more period dramas than I care to admit, and she's suffered through every bad action movie I've ever loved. It's a trade-off. Weekends are sacred. Saturdays we're up and out early for the farmer's market. She gets flowers. I get whatever fresh bread they're offering. We try new food trucks, stop for coffee, stroll around the park. It's not glamorous, but it's our time. Sundays are slower, laundry, grocery runs, maybe a late brunch or a hike if the weather's good. Sometimes we don't leave the house at all. We've got a reading nook upstairs that catches the best afternoon light, and on the right day, we'll both end up there without saying a word, just sitting in silence with our books and the cat curled between us. We have friends over every few weeks. Small dinner parties, game nights, nothing wild. We're not the late-night bar type. Sam makes charcuterie boards like it's a competitive sport. I handle drinks and playlists. Our friends tease us for being domesticated, but I think we've just figured out what makes us happy. 12 years in, it still feels solid. Familiar. We know each other's rhythms. When to leave each other alone, when to lean in. There's comfort in that, in knowing someone so well that words aren't always necessary. That kind of closeness is rare. It's something I never take for granted. Sometimes I think the best parts of our marriage aren't even the big moments, not the anniversary trips or birthday surprises, but the small, repeated things. The quiet stuff we've done 1,000 times. Like grocery shopping together. That probably sounds mundane, but there's something oddly grounding about it. She takes her time, checking labels, comparing brands. I grab the basics, check expiration dates, sneak snacks into the cart when she's not looking. We always end up in the checkout line with way more than we planned. But that's us. We plan, then we improvise. We split the chores pretty evenly, without needing a chart or a weekly fight about who forgot to empty the dishwasher. I handle trash and yard work. She manages the bills and keeps our calendar organized. She's good with dates, appointments, birthdays, social stuff. I'm more of the "did we pay the water bill yet?" guy. Somehow, it balances. We still flirt, which I think surprises some people. She'll walk past me while I'm doing dishes and brush her hand across my back, or lean over to kiss my cheek just because. I'll leave notes in her lunch sometimes. Nothing elaborate, just little things like "hope your meeting goes well," or "miss you already." It sounds cheesy, but it matters. We've never stopped showing up for each other in those little ways. That's always been a strength of ours. One thing I admire about Samantha is how self-assured she is in public. She knows how to read a room, how to steer a conversation, how to connect with people without trying too hard. At parties or events, she's the one everyone gravitates toward. I'm more reserved, better one-on-one. But we complement each other that way. I ground her, and she pulls me out of my shell. We're not a perfect match, but we've always been a good fit. We don't fight often, but when we do, we've learned how to handle it. No yelling, no silent treatment. Just time, space, and eventually a conversation where we both own what we need to. Early on, it wasn't like that. We'd retreat into ourselves, let things fester. But over time, we got better. Marriage teaches you that love isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about learning how to move through it without breaking the connection. We've traveled a fair bit together, weekend getaways, national parks, one big trip to Europe a few years back. But some of our favorite memories are from the road trips where nothing went to plan. Like the time we got a flat tire in the middle of nowhere and ended up staying at a weird little roadside motel with a broken heater and a vending machine dinner. We still laugh about it. That's the thing. We've always been able to laugh together, even when things went sideways. 12 years in, I honestly believed we had something solid. Not flashy, not perfect, but strong, reliable, built on shared effort, mutual respect, and the comfort of knowing we were in it together. I looked at her and saw home. At the time, I had no idea how quickly everything was about to change. It started with a conversation I never expected. It was a Thursday night, late enough that the house was quiet, but early enough that neither of us was tired. We'd just finished a movie and were cleaning up dinner plates when Samantha said, "Can we talk about something?" Not in a dramatic way. Just neutral. Casual. Too casual, actually. I dried my hands, leaned against the counter, and told her, of course. She took a breath. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about where we are in life. And I want to ask you something, but I need you to really listen before you react." That got my attention. Then she said it. Straight out. No lead up, no dancing around. "I want to explore the idea of an open relationship." I didn't speak at first. I genuinely thought I'd misheard her. I even laughed a little, waiting for the punchline. But she didn't laugh back. She just looked at me calm, expectant, like she'd rehearsed this. I asked her what she meant exactly. "You mean, like, seeing other people?" She nodded. "Not to replace what we have," she said quickly. just to add dimension. Something different. Something new. New. That word sat in my chest like a stone. She kept talking, like she'd been waiting a long time to get this out. She said she still loved me, still wanted to be with me. That this wasn't about being unhappy, just curious. That we'd gotten comfortable. Predictable. And wasn't it better to talk about these things openly, rather than let them fester or turn into resentment? She said it like it was logical, reasonable, almost clinical. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I just stood there, trying to understand how we got from date nights and shared routines to this. To her asking if she could invite someone else into what I thought was ours. I don't want that, I said after a long silence. I don't need dimension. I need you. Just you. She didn't argue. She didn't get angry. She just gave this small nod, like she'd expected that answer. Okay, she said. I figured you might say that. And then she walked upstairs like we'd just talked about repainting the guest room. Like nothing had happened. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like an hour. Her plate was still sitting in front of me, fork resting at an angle, a bite of pasta left untouched. It suddenly felt like the most distant thing in the world, that plate, that meal, that conversation. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what it meant. I still don't. I told myself maybe it was just a passing thought, something she read in a blog post or heard from a friend and wanted to explore. I told myself people get curious, and marriages go through phases, and this was just a weird one. Something we'd move past. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't shake something loose. Because when the person you love says, what we have isn't quite enough anymore, even in the kindest voice, it's hard to hear anything else. It's been about 3 weeks since Samantha brought up the idea of an open relationship, and even though we never spoke about it again, something has definitely changed between us. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just a low hum of distance that didn't used to be there. She didn't push the conversation after I said no. Didn't revisit it. Didn't argue. Didn't guilt me for saying what I felt. She just moved on, at least outwardly. But ever since that night, I can't help but feel like something shifted underneath the surface. We still go about our routines, we still eat dinner together, still watch the occasional movie, still talk about work and errands and weekend plans. But the tone of it all feels off. Like she's here, but not really with me. She's been on her phone more. I don't mean constantly, and I know that sounds petty to even mention. But it's different now. It's not just scrolling. It's the way she shields the screen slightly when I walk into the room. The way she'll smile at a message, then quickly swipe it away. The way she doesn't leave it on the kitchen counter when she goes upstairs anymore. It's always with her now, even if she's just grabbing laundry. That wasn't a thing before. I try not to read into it at first. People go through phases. Work gets busier, distractions pile up, and not every glance at a phone has to mean something deeper. But when it starts happening over and over again, and when the feeling of disconnection keeps growing, you start noticing more than you want to. Last Friday, she said she was meeting up with a friend from work for drinks. Nothing unusual. She's always had a few close friends in her office. But when I asked who, she hesitated just long enough for it to register. Then she said a name I didn't recognize. New hire, she added quickly, already grabbing her bag. I nodded, said, have fun, and didn't press it. But after she left, I sat at the table a long time thinking about how I used to know everyone she worked with. Not just names, stories, personalities, funny little office anecdotes she'd share over dinner. Lately, that's dried up. She came home later than I expected that night. Not late, just later. I was still up, reading in bed. She seemed surprised I was awake, like she had mentally prepared for a quiet house. She gave me a soft kiss, changed into pajamas, and slid into bed. She smelled like a different cologne, not one I recognized, and when I asked if the bar had been crowded, she just said, loud, not my scene. I said okay. She turned off the light. The next morning, I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was projecting, that I'd let one awkward conversation plant a seed of suspicion I never used to have. But then I saw her laughing at a text on her phone while she made coffee. She didn't notice me watching. There was a lightness in her expression that I hadn't seen in a while, the kind that used to be reserved for us. And when she saw me, she quickly put the phone face down on the counter. Maybe I'm just feeling insecure after what she asked. Maybe I'm overthinking. But the version of her I see now, it's like I only get pieces of her. Carefully measured. Edited. I haven't said anything. I don't want to create something out of nothing. But at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that something's happening just outside my line of sight. something I'm not being invited into. And that quiet space between us, it's getting wider. It's a strange thing to feel alone in a house you built with someone. I keep trying to remind myself that this is just a phase, that all long-term relationships ebb and flow. You go through patches where you drift a little, where the rhythm gets off. But lately, it's like we're speaking two different dialects of the same language. Close enough to be functional, but not close enough to be heard. Samantha hasn't done anything explicitly wrong. She hasn't disappeared for days, or picked fights, or stormed out of the room. If anything, she's calm. Too calm. That's what's unnerving. There's no tension on the surface, but underneath, in the silences between conversations, in the way her eyes sometimes avoid mine, I can feel it. She's been going out more lately. Not constantly, but it's frequent enough to notice. Drinks after work, catching up with old friends, yoga on weekend mornings that stretch into full afternoons. I never tell her she can't. Of course I don't. But there's something about the way she tells me where she's going that feels rehearsed. Like she's already mapped out the story before I ask. And when she comes back, there's always a new scent clinging to her. Not perfume, exactly, but the faint trace of somewhere else. A room I'm not in. A life I'm not part of. I've stopped asking follow-up questions. It's not that I'm afraid of the answers. It's that I'm afraid of how much I want to ask. Afraid of sounding paranoid. Of making this into something it might not be. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't sit heavy on my chest every time she smiles at a text she doesn't share, or every time she tells me just a work thing and disappears behind the click of the front door. And still, I tell myself, maybe this is me. Maybe I'm the one creating distance, ever since she asked about the open relationship. Maybe I haven't been fully present either. I mean, how do you completely let your guard down after someone you love asks if they can sleep with other people? Even if they back off afterward, the idea doesn't vanish. It lingers. It reshapes the space between you, even if no one talks about it again. I've noticed she doesn't reach for me as much at night. We used to fall asleep tangled together, or at least close enough to touch. Now there's space between us. Sometimes she turns away before I even switch off the light. It's not cold, not outwardly, just distant. Like I'm no longer the center of her gravity. Like her orbit has shifted slightly in a direction I can't follow. I tried bringing up the idea of doing something together, a weekend trip, just the two of us. Her response was polite, appreciative even, but non-committal. Maybe when things settle down at work, she said. Then she was back on her phone. I didn't push it. What unsettles me the most isn't that we're arguing. It's that we aren't. There's no fight to resolve. No confrontation. Just a slow fade. So quiet it's hard to pinpoint the moment it began. And every time I convince myself I'm imagining things, something small, a glance, a lie I want to believe is harmless, pulls me back into doubt. I don't know what's happening. I don't have proof of anything. But something is changing. And for the first time in our marriage, I feel like I'm watching it from the outside. I've stopped pretending that nothing's changed. I still don't have facts, still haven't caught her in a lie I can pin to the wall. But something has shifted so deeply that I'd be lying to myself if I kept trying to explain it away. Our marriage feels like a hallway where all the lights have started flickering. We're still walking through it together, but I'm stumbling more often. She seems to move just fine in the dark. We used to talk in the mornings about our dreams, our plans for the day, whatever dumb thing one of us read online before breakfast. Lately, it's small talk at best. She scrolls through her phone while I make coffee, glances up to say thanks when I hand her the mug, and then disappears upstairs to get ready. I sit at the table longer than I used to, just listening to the silence that's slowly replaced our conversations. It's not just quiet, it's vacant, like the absence of something I used to rely on without realizing. Last weekend, I suggested we go out for dinner. Nothing fancy, just the little Italian place near the park where we used to go once a month like clockwork. I mentioned it casually, expecting at least a smile. Instead, she hesitated, then said she was already meeting a friend for dinner. A work friend I've never heard of. I asked if I knew them, and she shook her head. New hire, she said again, like that was supposed to cover it. I didn't argue. I just nodded and told her to have a good time. I spent the night on the couch, not because we were fighting, we weren't, but because I couldn't bring myself to lie in bed and pretend everything was fine. When she came home, it was late. Later than she said she'd be. She didn't look surprised to find me downstairs. She gave me a half smile, kissed my forehead, and said, "You should come to bed." I followed her upstairs like a guest in my own life. The next morning, I opened her laptop by accident. I thought it was mine. We have similar models, and I wasn't paying attention. It was already logged in, her tabs still open. Nothing incriminating. A news article, her work email, a Spotify playlist, and one tab with a Reddit thread about navigating non-monogamy in long-term relationships. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't click anything, didn't read the comments. Just sat there, trying to decide whether I had the right to feel what I was feeling. She never lied about the topic. She brought it up directly. But seeing it again, hidden away like that, made me feel like it wasn't over. Like maybe it had never really been a conversation. Maybe it was a signal. Or a warning. I closed the laptop, gently, like I was afraid it might explode in my hands. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept trying to remember the last time she told me she loved me without me saying it first. The last time she touched me like she meant it. The last time I felt chosen instead of tolerated. She's still warm when she speaks to me. Still friendly. Still physically present. But emotionally, she feels further away than ever. And the worst part is, I don't even know who to blame. It happened on a Tuesday. That ordinary kind of weekday where you wake up thinking you know how it's going to go. Work was slow, some server issue got delayed, and my afternoon meetings were canceled. Around 2, I figured I'd pack up, grab some takeout for us, and surprise Samantha. We hadn't had a quiet night in together for a while, and maybe, just maybe, a part of me hoped it would remind us of who we used to be. I parked in front of the house and noticed her car already there. I remember thinking it was odd. She was supposed to be in the office on Tuesdays. But I told myself maybe she had a headache. Maybe she was just working from home. I walked up the front steps, plastic bag of Thai food in one hand, keys in the other. The sun was still out. The house looked exactly like it always does. Familiar. Safe. The moment I opened the front door, something felt wrong. Not dramatically, just off. The kind of off that your gut notices before your brain catches up. The air felt warmer than usual. Heavier. The lights were off downstairs, the curtains drawn, even though she always lets the light in during the day. I called out her name once. No answer. I started walking toward the stairs. Halfway up, I heard it. Voices. A low laugh. Then a pause. Then a sound that made my chest cave in, not because I didn't recognize it, but because I did. That intimate sound. The one I've only ever heard from her in moments we shared. Private. Vulnerable. Hers and mine. Only now, it wasn't mine anymore. I don't remember how I got to the top of the stairs. My body just moved. My heart was pounding in a way I've never felt. Not even during emergencies or moments of fear. This wasn't fear. This was the edge of something much darker. The bedroom door was cracked open. I pushed it the rest of the way. And there they were. Her back was to me, half covered by the sheet. Her hair a mess, her breath still catching. The man, some stranger, was lying beside her, propped up on one elbow, like this was normal. Like this wasn't the world collapsing. It took her a second to notice me. When she did, she jolted upright, grabbing the sheet to cover herself like modesty mattered now. "Oh my God," she said, her voice cracking. The man sat up too, eyes wide, not saying a word, just watching me, waiting. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood there, looking at them. My wife. The woman who made coffee with me every morning, who told me she loved me, who'd once cried in my arms over a flat tire and a broken weekend plan. And now she was here, in our bed, with someone else, like I was a forgotten detail in her story. "Get out," I said finally. My voice didn't shake. "Both of you." She tried to speak, tried to explain, to offer something, I don't know what. An apology? An excuse? But I didn't hear it. I turned, walked out of the room, and went straight downstairs. My hands were steady as I opened the front door. The man came down first. He didn't look at me, just slipped past and left. I could hear his car start before the door even closed behind him. Samantha followed, wrapped in a robe, pleading now. "It's not what you think," she said. Please let me explain." "You asked for an open relationship," I said, still staring straight ahead. I said no. "And you went and did it anyway. Don't insult me with lies." She froze. And in that moment, I saw it, the truth written across her face. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she got caught. I closed the door behind her, and then I locked it. After I closed the door, I just stood there, one hand on the doorknob, forehead resting lightly against the wood, eyes closed. My chest was tight, but I wasn't shaking. That surprised me. I always thought if something like this happened, If I ever walked in on the woman I loved with someone else, I'd fall apart. That I'd scream or cry or break something just to feel the shock leave my body. But I didn't. I felt clear. Hollow maybe, but sharp. Like a quiet storm had passed through me and left behind only ice. Upstairs, I could hear her pacing, bare feet against hardwood, drawers opening and closing. She must have realized I wasn't letting her stay, and she didn't come back down. Not right away. I sat on the couch, in the same spot where we used to sit side by side with our legs tangled under a blanket, and I stared at the wall for a long time. Not thinking, just existing. The smell of takeout still lingered in the air. The unopened bag sat on the kitchen counter like props from a life that didn't belong to me anymore. Eventually, she came down the stairs. She was fully dressed now, face blotchy, eyes red, but she wasn't crying anymore. She stood a few feet from me, arms crossed like she was bracing for something. "Can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was small, measured. Not a hint of defiance, just caution. I stood up, walked past her without a word, and opened the front door again. "You made your choice," I said. "Now live with it." "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she said. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you I needed something more." I turned to her then, looked her straight in the eyes. "You did tell me," I said. "You asked for an open relationship. And I said no. That was me telling you where I stood. You didn't negotiate. You didn't wait. You didn't care. You went out and did it anyway, in our bed, in our home, with a man you thought I'd never see." She looked down. No words. Just silence. "Take whatever you need for tonight," I said. "Clothes. A toothbrush. Whatever. The rest of your stuff will be boxed up and outside by the weekend. You won't be coming back." "What about?" she started, but I cut her off. "No. We're not doing this. You made it clear. This marriage is over. You ended it the second you brought a stranger into our bed." She didn't argue. She didn't scream or beg. She went upstairs, slowly, and came back down with a duffel bag and her purse. She stood in the doorway for a second, like she was hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. I looked past her, through her, like she was no longer someone I recognized. Because she wasn't. When the door closed behind her, I locked it again, this time with finality. Then I walked to the front closet, grabbed the toolkit, and went straight to the garage. I changed the locks that night. Not out of spite, out of survival. I needed to reclaim that space, that threshold, that house. It was mine before her, and it would be mine after her. Every click of the screwdriver was a small piece of control returning to my hands. When I was done, I showered. I stood under hot water until my skin turned red. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed, in and out, over and over, until the shock wore off and something deeper settled in. Not rage, not grief, but clarity. I'd been lied to, disrespected, betrayed by the one person I trusted above all others. And there was no salvaging it. She was gone, and I wasn't going to chase her. The first few days after she left felt eerily quiet. It wasn't just the absence of her voice or the missing thud of her footsteps upstairs, it was the emotional silence. No tension, no pretending, no invisible weight hanging in the room. Just me, alone in a house I wasn't sure felt like mine yet. I didn't sleep much at first. Not because of nightmares, but because I didn't know how to stop replaying everything, the sound of her voice that day, the look on her face, the image of them tangled in the bed we used to share. I boxed her things slowly, not out of hesitation, but because each item felt like evidence. Of what? I'm not even sure. A life we lived? A life she pretended to live? I found cards I'd written her years ago, little souvenirs from trips we took, clothes she used to wear before she started dressing like someone I didn't recognize. Each piece felt like a question I didn't have an answer to. I put it all in storage bins, sealed the lids, and left them in the garage. I haven't touched them since. For a while, I just went through the motions. Wake up. Coffee. Work. Dishes. Repeat. There was a numbness to it, but also a strange steadiness. It's like the storm had passed, and now I was left standing in the debris, not panicked, just taking stock. I started cooking again. Small meals, just for me. I opened the windows, rearranged the living room furniture, threw out the duvet we used to sleep under and bought a new one. Not because it was broken, just because it reminded me too much of who I was when I didn't know what was happening around me. Then, a few weeks later, I ran into someone. It wasn't planned. I was at a bookstore, a quiet Saturday, nothing on the schedule, and I overheard someone asking a staff member for recommendations on a novel that doesn't try too hard. That line made me laugh. When I turned, she smiled like we were already in on the same joke. Her name was Claire. She was standing in the fiction aisle with a tote bag, messy hair, and that kind of easy posture that made her seem completely comfortable in her own skin. We ended up talking for 10 minutes, then 20. She asked if I wanted to grab a coffee next door. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because it had been so long since I'd said yes to something that wasn't part of a routine. But I said yes. And it was easy, not electric or overwhelming, just simple, human. She talked about the book she was reading, the part-time teaching job she just picked up, her ridiculous dog who steals socks and buries them in the backyard. I told her about my job, my overly ambitious houseplant collection, and a few half-truths about my recently single status. She didn't press. I didn't lie. But I wasn't ready to unpack everything yet. We've met for coffee a few more times since. Nothing romantic. Not yet. Just two people in the same city, at the same point in their lives, breathing again. I don't know where it's going, and I'm not rushing to find out. For now, I'm just glad to feel something new, something not tied to betrayal or suspicion or the weight of everything I lost. Just quiet company. And the reminder that life, even after heartbreak, still has room for surprise. It's been just over 3 months since I opened that bedroom door and watched everything I thought I knew unravel in a single breath. Some days, it still doesn't feel real. Other days, it feels like it happened a lifetime ago, like I've lived 3 different versions of myself since then. The husband who trusted without question. The man who got blindsided. And now, someone else entirely. Someone still healing, still learning, but no longer stuck. I've thought a lot about the version of myself I was before she asked for an open relationship. That version of me truly believed we were solid. I would have bet my life on our commitment, on our trust. Looking back, I can see how much I missed. Not because I was foolish, but because I was committed. I believed in our marriage so deeply that I couldn't imagine her wanting anything else. That belief, as painful as it was to lose, wasn't a weakness. It was love. Real love. The kind that shows up, stays late, folds laundry, makes coffee, and listens. The kind she didn't value until it was gone. After she left, I started keeping a notebook, nothing formal, just scattered thoughts, phrases, fragments. At first, it was messy, angry, confused. But over time, the pages changed. I stopped writing about her and started writing about me. What I missed, what I wanted, what I refused to lose again. Claire, the woman I met at the bookstore, she's still around. We're taking it slow. We've gone out a few times now, always casually. No pressure, no expectations. She knows the broad strokes of what happened, and she hasn't asked for the full story. She's kind, smart, the type of person who listens without trying to fix you. Being around her reminds me of who I am outside of pain. I don't know what it'll become, but for now, it's enough just to feel respected, seen, safe. I've been filling my time differently now. I started running again. Signed up for a woodworking class I've been putting off for years. Took a weekend trip on my own for the first time ever. Just a few days in a quiet cabin with no phone signal and a stack of paperbacks. It wasn't some grand escape. Just space. Silence. A reset. As for Samantha, I haven't spoken to her since that night. She texted once, a short message that said, "I'm sorry. I know I can't fix it, but I wanted you to know." I didn't respond. Not because I'm still angry, but because there's nothing left to say. Some doors, once closed, aren't meant to open again. And that one? I locked it for a reason. This isn't the life I thought I'd be living. But it's honest. It's mine. And more than anything, it's free from the quiet lies that once wrapped around me like a warm, slow poison. If you're reading this and you've been where I've been, if you've sat in the silence after betrayal, wondering who you are without the person who broke you, let me say this. You are not what they did to you. You're what you choose to become afterward. And me? I'm becoming someone I actually recognize again.